Okay, this is kind of a fun topic of mine. How many people does it take to write a song? You've heard me talk about this in a lot of videos over the last couple of years of how many songwriters it takes. Some of the songs have 6, 7, 8, 9 songwriters. Well, I was looking at the new Coldplay record that came out. There was a song called We Pray, and I click on the thing on Spotify to see the songwriters, and it filled the screen. Check this out. I sent this to a bunch of my friends. I was like, can you believe this? It starts out Andreas Torres, Ilya Selmanzadeh, Mauricio Rengifo, Max Martin, Chris Martin, and it just goes on and on and on and on. There's 15 different people writing this one song. Now, before I talk about how ridiculous that is and play you the song, because you're going to think like it took 15 people to write this song, and I don't mean that. It's not like it's a terrible song, but does it really take 15 people to write a song? Let's talk about historically how many people it took to write songs. Back in the 60s, we'll just start there, there were many songwriters that wrote their own songs. You may know Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen and Paul Simon and Carole King and Neil Young. These people wrote their own songs themselves and recorded them. There are no extra people. Not that there weren't songwriting teams that historically were popular at the same time. Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lennon, McCartney, Elton John and Bernie Taupin, Holland, Dozier Holland that wrote all the great Motown hits, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis that wrote a lot of hits for Michael Jackson and Mariah Carey, Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil. Remember the song Never Gonna Let You Go? I did the most complicated pop song of all time. They wrote that song together. If you then fast forward to the 70s and 80s, in Nashville it started to become more common to have 3 songwriters. And this remained the case for years and years. As a matter of fact, when I went in to Nashville to start writing, I had a #1 song, and I've talked about this before, in 2013. And I immediately got put in with all the A-list songwriters. And the first guys that I wrote with explained to me how it worked. I was like, why do they have 3 people in all these songwriting sessions? I was like, well, what you want to do is you want to have the best chance of getting a song cut. So what they would do is they take one person from Sony, like me, Sony ATV Publishing, put them together with someone from Warner Chappell, and then maybe someone from a different publishing company. So if you have 3 different publishing companies, you have a lot better chance of having the song get cut. Why is that? You might know a manager that's a Sony artist, or you might know a manager that's an artist that's on Warner that you can play it for, or the head of A&R at Sony ATV could say, oh yes, I know this person's looking for a song. By involving more big corporations like that, you had a better chance. It makes sense. One of the things that happened during this time period in the 70s and 80s when you start getting these songwriting teams is that you'd start having people that were specialists in things. You know, somebody might be a synth programmer or something, and they might get a songwriting credit because they came up with some linear thing that happened on a song. This really became more popular later on, like I would say after the year 2000. It was the write a word, get a third thing that they used to say up in Nashville. That was the joke. You write one word and you get a third of the song in a 3-person co-write. Now, not all songwriting cuts are the same. Those 15 people in the Coldplay song, Max Martin probably gets 50% of the song, maybe 40% of the song. And a lot of these people are getting 1% of the publishing from it. Chris Martin of the band might be getting 40% to split between him and the rest of the band. There's a lot of bands like Aerosmith, for example, that had their first #1 hit, Don't Want to Miss a Thing, that Diane Warren wrote. She was the only songwriter on it. Now, customarily, when somebody cuts a song, an artist, they generally get a cut whether they had anything to do with it or not. This has been standard for decades. If you want me to cut the song, I'm going to get 50% of it. And some of the most famous artists that, I don't want to say who they are, but you can imagine, a lot of them were getting 50% of a song just to cut it because the people were so desperate, the writers, to get that cut and possibly have a single that made millions of dollars that they gladly give away 50% of their song that they wrote themselves. And if they didn't do that, they wouldn't get the song cut. So they were like, well, it'd be better to have 50% of something than 0% of nothing. Totally logical, right? Let's go and listen to this Coldplay song. The song's called We Pray by Coldplay and 11 other people. Whoa. Now remember, Coldplay is piano or guitar, bass, and drums.
brother is blessed. Praying for enough, pray that Julia wins. Pray I judge nobody and forgive me my sins. I pray we make it, pray my friend.
Sounds amazing.
Pray as I take it, unto others I do. Praying on your love, we pray with every breath. Though I'm
not sure what.
The shadow of death. And so we pray for someone to come and show me the way.
These people could be contributing.
Some shelter and some records to play. And so we pray, we'll be singing Barouch, yeah. Pray that we make it to the end of the day. And so we pray, I know somewhere that heaven is waiting. And so we pray, I know somewhere there's something amazing. So
we're about halfway through the song.
Until we make it to the end of the day.
I pray that love will shelter us from our fears. Oh, I pray you trust to let me wipe off your tears. Confront all the pain that we felt.
Okay, so if you have people that are contributing as a vocalist, rapping, things like that, okay, I understand there's extra songwriters. You have generally the core of the song, you have the 4 Coldplay guys, who I can't hear anything of. This is synth bass, this is programmed drums. I'm not sure if there's any guitar in there. I don't remember hearing any guitar. So the guys in Coldplay, they're contributing in that they're in the band. So they immediately get their cut. Chris Martin's contributing his voice. I don't know if he contributed any lyrics, maybe. Maybe he wrote some of the lyrics on this. But obviously these people are contributing lyrics. They're contributing the bass part, maybe, or some of the violin lines or something. I mean, there's something that people are contributing. But 15 people, I don't know what they're doing, unless they're just taking people off the street. There's somebody that walked into the studio. Oh, you shouldn't have come in here. Oh, now we got to give them 1% of the song. I mean, it's really ridiculous, right? What is the problem? People are like, well, so what if 15 people wrote this song? Maybe it just defeats the individuality of the artist. Maybe it's music by committee is not really interesting. There is no singular vision to this, or just a couple people bouncing things off each other. You could say, hey, Lennon and McCartney, they had George Martin to bounce things off of. Without him, he's not credited on here, but maybe he should have been credited on a lot of the Beatles songs, because maybe George was like, oh, maybe we should do this harmony here. Why don't you go to this chord change here? Because he had such a vast knowledge of music. But they're the only ones credited on it. Okay, fine. So there's one extra person. This idea that there are 15 people that are songwriters. If you go across this whole Coldplay record, all the songs are like this. You go back to their early records, it's just the band members. I'd love to know your thoughts about this, because I think this phenomenon is just making music incredibly boring. Hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. Thanks for watching.